you identify something about yourself and you accept it. So for instance, you go and get a haircut. I don't get those very often anymore, obviously, but you you are
For
worried
all our
about
listeners, Cody is a very handsome, bald man, but very, very handsome with some amazing facial hair as well.
yes, very good.
Does society, their acceptance of it, have any influence on? I'm just curious.
So that's another great example. So identifying that society may not accept it, and then addressing those fears, acknowledging that that is who you are, and that who you are is who you should live and who you should be in your life. And I mean, in short, fuck them. Like
All of it. Okay.
in the United States, in the Westernized culture, it's a highly monogamous society. And if
Is
you
it
start
though?
talking, huh? Say what?
I said, is it though?
Is it though?
Is it really? I mean, that's probably for another episode, but
yeah, so that's a whole other podcast.
I think it's a highly claimed monogamous society.
I'm gonna start another podcast about being a slut. Just reach out to me. I'll tell you.
Yeah. Welcome back to Counterpunch. Life hits you hard. We hit back harder. Today in our ring, I'm so excited to share with you not only one of my personal best friends coming all the way from Phoenix, Arizona, but someone who has ample knowledge of self-awareness, just a wonderful mindset, and I think a whole lot he could share and give to our listeners today. Welcome into our ring, Mr. Cody Gammon.
Ding, ding, ding.
How you doing, Cody?
Pretty dang good. How about you guys?
Fantastic.
You guys ready to be in the ring with me here, or what?
Right. I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us.
Yeah.
But I just want to clarify before we get started, which one of us is the punching bag?
Probably me lately.
Okay. Yeah, it's great to be on here. Shalene, I've read your book, and well, I didn't read it. I'm gonna lie, I don't like reading, so I listened to the Audible version of it. The woman's voice that was picked on there was somewhat comical when I'm thinking about you and what you would sound like, because if I'm reading it, I'm hearing your voice because I know you. And instead, it was like this, very polite woman's voice. And when she dropped expletives, I was like, that's not how Shalene would have said that word. But
That's great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, I think the book is helping quite a few people. Absolutely. I think that's fantastic. And one of the rounds we're going to talk about today, if you were to follow the book, 6 Rounds to Resilience, written by yours truly, is round one. Round one, which is acceptance. And just diving right in, I guess, like we do. Cody, what do you got for us on that? Anything at all?
yeah. So real quick here, let's take a brief step back. Brittany, you've been friends with Shalene for how long now?
Oh, maybe 10, 12 years
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
Close personal friend. I remember hearing that you, she's kind of one of your support networks on the support network conversation you had, which was, by the way, a great podcast. People should listen to that one. I had an opportunity to share some of the previews of it with my girlfriend, and she was like, "This is good stuff," and I'm like, "Yeah, it is good stuff." So it's great, Brittany. Hello, it's good to get face to face with you and get some FaceTime here. And I'm guessing if Shalene's a good friend of mine, then you'd probably be a good friend of mine as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so wonderful to have you. And like you said, be face to face. Excited to have a great conversation with you today.
Yeah, awesome. So onto the acceptance topic there, just taking a step away from it. As my understanding is of acceptance is you've acknowledged or recognized something in your life, or that's either happened to you, was thrust upon you, or through some self-discovery or otherwise. And because you now recognize it, it's identified, it's on your radar, you now need to accept that is part of either you or your life to be able to move on to the next step. Is that about right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's round one, because it's you've got to hit that before we can move forward, especially in terms of resiliency. Absolutely.
Yeah. So probably like a lot of people, they have identified things about themselves and they choose not to acknowledge it, and therefore they can never accept it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of those things come pretty easy for me, when you identify something about yourself and then you accept it. So for instance, you go and get a haircut. I don't get those very often anymore, obviously, but you you are worried
For all
about
our listeners, Cody is a very handsome, bald man, but very, very handsome with some amazing facial hair as well.
Yeah, yes, yes, very good. This is my wisdom growing here on my chin. You go to get a haircut, and when you walk in there, you're kind of fearful that the stylist is going to screw something up, and then whatever. And you walk out and you look in the mirror in your car, and you're like, huh, I like that, right? I like that about myself. Very easy to identify, very easy to acknowledge. It's a positive. You kind of move on. There's not a lot less to do with it. The more harder things in life, especially, and I'm going into, self image, if you will, what you look at when you're in the mirror, your acceptance of your body, if you will. You see things that you don't quite like about yourself. So you've identified them, and you choose not to acknowledge them. Sometimes you're just like, yeah, I'm just not going to think about that or look at that again. I'm just going to hide that part about me, not going to pay attention to it. But it's always there every time. So it's very, very hard to not acknowledge it. You can avoid it as much as possible. Then you start acknowledging it, and you're like, okay, it's true. This is part of me, and I don't like it. But you struggle with the pain of that. So at that point, you need to choose to accept it, to say, this is part of me. This is who I am, good or bad. This is who I am. And then choose what the heck to do about it. But you can't get to that point of where you get you're empowered with the choice, the option to even do something about it, unless you get to this point in your brain where you acknowledge that that is part of your existence and who you are. So, using an example of, like I said, like, your body and looking at yourself in the mirror and seeing things you don't like about yourself, that's pretty easy. I think a lot of people can relate to that, but it goes across such a broader spectrum. It could happen where, you're having financial problems, right? And you don't look at your bank account because you don't want to acknowledge that you're very poor at managing your money.
Mm-hmm.
And instead you just
out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
And then you're like, you know what? No, I'm really bad at managing money. I'm really tired of the pain that's happening to me, and I want to do something about it. Boom. You've acknowledged and accepted that this is a part of your life that you're struggling with. It's a great first step, but it's also hard to then do something about it. You go through another cycle of sweeping it under the rug. I know it's a problem. I know it's there. I've accepted it, but then I need to do something else. So we're trying to focus on the, acceptance here, and what people can do to get through to that, or maybe some experiences that I have that I can share. So back to, some things are easier than others to accept. So being very open and vulnerable, and sharing who I am to the audience here or who's listening. There were some things that came pretty quickly and easy for me. I'm what we would call a practicing naturist or a nudist. Okay. I love to go to beaches that are legally, you're allowed to just completely let yourself go and take everything off. There's a ton of other people there to do that. It's a really kind of stressful struggle for some people to do that, even though they may desire it, right? But I acknowledge something about myself, that was a desire and a freedom that I wish to experience. And there was a lot of fear around doing it, as well as what other people would think of me when I, was open about this and did this, and I didn't want to have to hide it from myself. And at the time, I was living with this woman who was my girlfriend, long-term girlfriend at the time. And I just, was like, this is something I want to do. It's like a part of me. Like I've accepted it. That's a part of me. I've never experienced it. So it may not be a truth. Like I may not actually enjoy it moving forward, but I have this really strong desire to go experience this thing. And thankfully she was very supportive. She's like, hey, that is not my deal, but I really don't care if you do it. Like, go have fun. That sounds great for you. And I did. And of course, it was nerve-wracking at first, but it became a part of me. And so I, again, like acknowledged the desire that I had. I accepted that it's part of me and I need to do something about it. I thought about what steps I needed to take to address the fears I had that were blocking me from doing it so that I could go do it, did it. And I don't know, that was like 20 years ago, probably at this point. So, 20 years later, it's just like breathing to me. There's no stress around it. It's just a part of who I am. It's ingrained in who I am. Same thing with this, with being, with being polyamorous, right? I really struggled with that for a lot longer than I did, wanting to experience nature without clothes on. Just a lot more touchy thing around relationships, and relationships with one person is difficult enough, much less two or three other people. In the United States, in the westernized culture, it's a highly monogamous society. And if
Is
you
it
start
though?
talking, huh? Say what?
I said, is it though?
Is it though?
Is it really? I mean, that's probably for
That's a
another
whole-
episode, but
Yeah, so that's a whole other podcast.
I think it's a
We can
highly
start around
claimed
that.
monogamous society.
I'm gonna start another podcast about being a slut. Just reach out to me. I'll tell you
Yeah.
how to be the ethical slut. If you've never heard of that book,
Exactly.
it's an actual
Is
book
it
out
really?
there.
But no, I was making a joke. I definitely know what you're saying, though. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that was a lot more difficult. I didn't really acknowledge that it was part of me for a long time, because acknowledging that would mean that I was somehow inherently broken. And there was a lot of shame around that. And it took a long time of dipping my toes into that space and becoming knowledgeable about how these things work, and finding there are, underground groups, large groups of people. They walk among you. I swear there's at least 1 out of 10 people you see on the streets has some type of form of ethical non-monogamy. Don't quote me on that stat. And frankly, there's not a lot of data around it, but just off the cuff, you'd be very surprised about how many people either knowingly practice ethical non-monogamy or unknowingly practice ethical non-monogamy. And so again, into acceptance, in order for me to become a whole person, for me to feel authentic, for me to walk my life and my path and my journey, I needed to accept that part of me. And acceptance is removing the shame and fear or guilt around whatever it is you're struggling with in doing your life. And these examples I'm giving you are all about like self-evolution and growth. There are obviously other situations in life that happen that that you have to go through an acceptance process with, like the death of a family member, right? You totaled your car because you were drunk or otherwise, right? You can deny it and sweep it under the rug as long as you want. You'll never grow and you'll never heal from that event unless you accept that it is part of your existence. So I talked a lot there. Any follow-ups on that?
Yeah, that's good stuff. And then I really, you got me thinking about with your story particularly. So you achieving acceptance, right? And what that looked like and how it felt. And it felt really good and freeing and freed up that stress. And you get to be your true authentical self, which I love that phrase. So my question is, again, off the cuff, just in your opinion, I think it'd be safe to say that Cody might be one of, I would say, few who is really living his authentical true life. I mean, Cody, do you think, again, this is just opinion based, but do you think there's a lot of people who really aren't, who haven't achieved acceptance and aren't living their authentic true self life? I know we're getting deep here, but you got me thinking.
That's the purpose of this, right? This is a conversation. And I would
Yeah.
say yes. One of the things that's frustrating as an individual who has gone through a lot of growth and put a lot of time into that to be able to walk this planet as your authentic self is seeing all the people that are not, and knowing that they're either blind to the fact that they're not, or they likely know that they're not, and they struggle with that every single day. Jim Carrey has a video snippet that's gone viral a couple times where, and I'm going to summarize it, where he talks about you can go through life living these different characters. Okay, you can live these different actors, and the whole time your real self is in the background, watching these actors live out your life, your life. And at the very end, when you are leaving this world, and this is the visual that, like, it makes my hair stand up just thinking about it. But the visual he said is picture yourself being lowered into your grave by these actors. They're all holding you, these characters, and you're watching your life slowly slip away from you as you die, and you never lived it. These people all lived it, and they're slowly saying, all right, goodbye. It was really nice. Thanks for the fun time. That's it. Is that how you want to go about your existence? Letting these other people in your head, these personas, these characters, live your life for you? And I was like, fuck no.
Right.
No, that like, whoa. And uh, having lost a lot of people in my life through disease and otherwise, where I was a caretaker, it was very, very clear to me that my existence on this planet is unknown. I could wake up tomorrow and not be here. And every moment that I have is precious to be me and not one of these actors. And we create these actors as a defense mechanism against some type of fear or trauma or way to fit in because we don't feel like we belong or otherwise, to behave and act in these ways so that we do feel safe and comfortable. And again, those people are living our lives and they don't always fulfill our actual needs. And so they might fulfill parts of them, which is the safety part, but all the other desires that you have are being left on the table. And that's just not fair to you, the person.
Fantastic.
Well, I have a question for you. If you, you said you were a caregiver with someone who had a terminal illness, correct? I don't know the age of this person or how old you were at the time or anything, but did that kind of create that sense of urgency that you needed to start making those changes in your life and start accepting, who you really are and, really captivating what you wanted your life to look like?
Yeah, but the progress was not linear. It was 0 to 100 miles an hour in the first couple of years of me going onto that journey, and then the subsequent death of that individual derailing me back down to where I was, for me to then eventually accept that I was back down there, in order for me to then go, okay, that catalyst that I had of being a caretaker propelled me. And then when that catalyst was gone, I dropped it. Now it's just me. I have to internally motivate myself instead of having this person out there that's going to be an inspiration, if you will, for me to not be like them. And sometimes that's helpful when you look at other people that are doing the things that it works both ways. They're either living the life that you want to live, or they're living the life you don't want to live that you're currently living, and you're seeing their pains, and their pains are your pains, and you acknowledge that that's a problem, and you accept that you are the same person as they are. You have the same problems they have, and you want to fix it. So in the first 2 years, I mean, like, legitimately, she had a heart attack. I took her to the hospital. The ambulance took her to the hospital. And I, like, 2 or 3 days later, quit smoking. I was a smoker. And I was like, I can't continue to do this, or I'm going to end up like that. So quit cold turkey, done. Just no more of that. And then also, if I don't monitor what I eat and my weight, all the other different types of blood panels you get regularly that are like off the charts and they're not in the right direction, then I'm going to end up like this person as well. So within the 2-year period, I think I lost 30 or 40 pounds, got off any types of medications that I was on to try and rectify my blood panels from a cardiovascular perspective. And also, reduce the amount of alcohol that I was drinking, to some extent, but it was a very stressful time, and so finding outlets to soothe the anxiety and stress were there. But frankly, because I was taking care of her 6-year-old son all the way through age 12, and her mother, who could not afford to live on her own and moved in with us. I was the sole breadwinner of the household. I immediately was thrust into a 2-parent with a grandma household for a kid to a single parent with a grandparent, a single parent with a kid and a grandmother to kind of help out here and there, and being the head of the household and having to make all the decisions. And the stress from that and the busy schedule didn't really allow for me to have space to go get drunk. Like I can't be drunk at home, so I have to take care of these people. I can't get drunk and wake up and be hungover the next morning, because if I don't have a job and get to work and do what I need to do, the household income goes bye-byes, and then we're all in a really, really bad pickle, right? So part of it was I lost a lot of weight because I was very stressed, and anxiety ridden, and couldn't drink as much, because if I did, then that would put us in serious risk.
Sounds like you achieved acceptance though, almost like immediate, you're like, I know I need to quit smoking cigarettes. I know I need to eat healthier. I know I can't drink as much. Like, sounds like you really personally were thrust immediately into this role, and you were just knocking out acceptance though. Like, this is my role now. Like, I'm going to be their caretaker now without any help. And I've got to be, operating on all 4 cylinders to make this work. So
Yeah, I think that's a really
Yeah.
good observation. I had already identified those things about myself,
Mhm.
right? Like I knew that smoking was bad. I knew that I drank too much. I knew that I
Right.
was overweight and didn't like my body and the way I looked.
But you were doing it.
But
Yeah.
I was doing it because it was like,
Yeah.
hey, no problem. And then problem, and I was like, fast track to acceptance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We got to go now.
Yeah.
I gotta go now. This has got to change immediately.
Sometimes
And
life
so,
puts us
yeah.
on that path. Yeah. Where
Yeah.
you're,
And
yeah.
even as mothers, with our children, it does create that sense of urgency whenever, because what we do and how we carry ourselves, that affects everything in our child's life. And, being a caregiver, and which I so commend you for doing, it definitely, especially under those really intense circumstances, it really just forces yourself to look at different things that you might not have otherwise.
I'm going to take a moment and commend you, Cody, for not crumbling and
Yeah.
stepping up and achieving. And that's why you're in our ring with us today.
Yeah, it's actually
Life hit you hard, and just as he hit back harder.
Yeah.
He
I
hit
hit
back
back
harder.
way harder.
That's
Yeah.
right. So
So many people on the outside of this looking in said to me, I have no idea how you did that.
because you didn't
I
have a
don't know
choice.
how you got through that
Yeah.
and did what you did. You are such a strong person. I did not view myself as such. To me, it was just I was doing the things that had to be done. And looking back on it, another thing I've acknowledged about myself is that, and accepted, is that I have a very hard time accepting praise from people, right? It's a childhood trauma that I have, where if someone says I do something really well, I don't absorb it, because I don't view myself as somebody who can do things really well.
You like to
And so
immediately deflect it.
I
Yeah.
immediately deflect it. I
Yeah.
don't let the smile and the good feelings happen. I tell myself I'm not worthy of that praise. But I got enough of it over time that I was like, yeah, dude, no, you're a badass. Like, you can fucking conquer shit. Like, you have no idea what you're capable of. And so while that was a tragedy, as most tragedies people go through, you grow through those tragedies. You come out the other end a different person. Sometimes people get chewed up and spit out by it. And other times people beat the machine and they come out stronger. And I think I just came out stronger, which was great.
I think so too.
Yeah.
It's like a poster boy for resiliency.
Yes.
I have a question kind of circling back. When you're talking about kind of the nudist and the more of these social types, if you don't mind us circling back there, the nudity and the polyamory, where you accepted it and maybe your partner accepted it, as you mentioned. Does society, their acceptance of it, have any influence on? I'm just curious.
So that's another great example. So identifying that society may not accept it, and then addressing those fears, acknowledging that that is who you are, and that who you are is who you should live and who you should be in your life. And I mean, in short, fuck them. Like,
All of it. Okay.
like,
So
like,
no, it really doesn't matter. Yeah.
I'm not, doing anything illegal. I'm not a serial killer. I'm not a pedophile. Like, this is not something that is, you know, wrong. Someone's view of it may be that it's immoral. Morality is highly subjective, and good for them. And like, if you don't like it, you don't have to do it. But myself and other folks who are like-minded, they all very much enjoy it, and we all get a lot of benefit and value to our life from it. And if they're going to open their mouth and have some opinion about it, I have to be prepared to not allow that to hurt me or to bother me, and understand that that is their views on life and how it should go. That doesn't mean that their views have to drive my existence.
Yeah, exactly. One of my best analogies of stuff like that and many stuff is this is it's like that mindset's like if Brittany's on a diet and she's mad at me for eating a donut. That's what it is. You eating a donut's gonna ruin my diet. Like, no, it's not.
I think that would make me a pretty bad friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
I
joke
love
about that kind of stuff. I mean, it's good. Yeah, it's a joke about that kind of stuff. People bring home a cake or something, and we all look at them like, why did you bring that in our house? You know we don't want to eat that stuff. It's just going to tempt us to eat it. It is not on our list of foods to eat. Why are you tempting me with that? So I get it, and it's fun to joke about. On that point though, since we're going to talk, I want to talk about alcoholism. I'm thankful for this platform to be able to share my alcoholism journey, because I think it's a real problem in this country, maybe in some other parts of the world as well. And the more people that can hear this story and maybe make a change in their life, the better, right? And that is that if you are a substance abuse user, bringing that substance in front of someone like that isn't quite the same as maybe bringing a cookie into the house. It may be for some people who are really addicted to food and have significant health issues, but for like this audience, for our panel here today, if Brittany brought in a cookie, we would just razz her about it. We wouldn't actually have a real impact or problem with that. But with alcohol, drinking in front of somebody who is an addict who's trying to recover can be very, very stressful. And I can tell you firsthand my experience with that. So after, my fiance, she was my fiance, passed away. I went through a mourning process and a grieving process, and that included letting it go, baby. Like, let's do all the types of drugs and alcohol I can get my hands on to soothe this pain that I have, that I'm not acknowledging or recognizing or accepting is the truth. I'd rather just stuff it away and not have to deal with it and soothe it in other ways. And that backfired horribly. And it was maybe about 2 years later, I put on another 40, 50 pounds. And I was having, cardiovascular problems and health issues, not to mention anxiety and depression that were just off the charts. I was a functioning alcoholic coming from a family of people who really like to drink. So on the outside, to most people, it didn't really look like there was much going on other than Cody's a big drinker. But on the inside, there was a whole lot of turmoil that I had to choose to accept was the making of myself, not of anybody else. It wasn't someone else causing this problem. It was me causing this problem. So
What led you to like ding ding ding, this is a problem. I need to do something.
I hired a life coach.
Okay.
I hired a life coach, and I hired this person because I was anxiety ridden about being able to perform a new job that I got. I got a career opportunity at an organization that was far and above the responsibilities that I thought I was skilled for. And this individual was very skilled in those areas and also ran a life coach business on the side. And so I reached out to her to be like, hey, I need help with my job. I'd like some mentorship. You life coaching. Maybe you can help me with my career. And little secret about life coaches, all of your problems with your career and your personal life are likely things inside of you that are stopping you from being able to be the person that you need to be or want to be. So they're going to dig in on that just like a therapist would or otherwise. And the conversation went from how I could be a better project planner to how did I feel when my mom and dad were arguing and I could hear it. And it was a very smooth conversation over the period of months working with her to get there. She's really good at what she does. But what it did is it uncovered all of this trauma that I wasn't aware of. And she helped me acknowledge that maybe that's some of the reasons I feel the same way about people that I work with. Why is it I think my boss hates me and wants to fire me? Why is it I think no one thinks I do a good job? Why is it when someone says I do a good job, I don't think it's good enough and I can't accept that praise, right? And alcohol amps up your nervous system. So I did a lot of self-help video on anxiety and depression, and alcohol kept being a reoccurring theme. And they talked about the effect of alcohol in the central nervous system, how it's a depressant, which I knew, but I always felt great when I was drunk. 4 to 6 beers a night, 12 pack on the weekend. I would go to work and work was work and my brain would check out on work, which is a great distraction, disassociate from my problems. And then off the clock, time to have a beer. That's what we do. We crack a beer and we start getting drunk because
It's so much easier than putting in the work. Yeah.
So much easier than dealing with the problems that are right in front of your face. And alcohol does a really damn good job of washing them away and just putting a stupid smile on your face until the next day.
That's probably pretty simply put why it's such a big issue in our country. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd wake up anxiety ridden and depressed immediately day one. And I'd go, I got to get through work so I can have a beer. Right. And eventually, again, I had identified that. I had to move into acknowledging it, that it was really the cause of my problems. And then I got very sad and depressed about the fact that I was, quote, broken, or that the problem was my problem. So then I sitting with that for a while and eventually getting tired of knowing that this issue is being caused by me. I eventually had to accept that it was either going to be me forever, or do I do things to try and make a change? And what do those things look like?
You hit the fork in the road.
Yes. And it's scary because what you've been doing is working, right? I wasn't homeless. I had a good job. I have great income. I had good relationships with people. Like everything from objectively on the outside looks great, but everything on the inside was a really hot mess. It was a real hot mess. So, enough of that, saying I don't want to feel this way anymore. I don't want this experience anymore. I want a different experience. What do I need to do that? Well, you've got to quit drinking. That's like step one. You got to quit drinking. So I, just like what we did with cigarettes, I quit drinking cold turkey. It's not easy to do. There was a couple times I had a drink here and there, and felt guilty and shameful about it. Had to tell myself that progress is not linear, and sometimes we go backwards before we can go forwards, etc., etc. Thankfully for me, my body started rejecting alcohol. So after going a break off of alcohol every day for a while, I would have a drink or two and I would start feeling sick from it. I no longer got the satisfaction of the relief from the pain. I only got the negative side effects of alcohol. And this was within like 30 minutes of my first drink. Other alcoholics may not experience that. So I was lucky in that case that my body said no more, and that made it a lot easier to get off that train. So for those of you out there that are struggling with that, and your body's not rejecting it, or your body's not doing what mine did to tell you, no, I don't want this anymore. I feel for you. It's going to be such a hard road for you. I still have family members who can't seem to get off that kick, and I watch what it does to their lives because I know, because I've lived it, and I wished I could help them, but I can't. You can't. They have to make the decision to change, and it's really, really tough.
Right. And then will you also share, since you've kind of walked us really step by step through this, what does it feel like now that what did it feel like, quit drinking and the self-awareness and the acceptance? So what did that feel like?
So got good news and bad news about that. Let me do the bad news first. The bad news is the journey never ends.
Okay.
When you accomplish that thing, after you've acknowledged it, accepted it, and moved through the next resiliency steps to actually get to the end of it, the fight is over and you've won. There's another match. Your career is not over. And if you're the heavyweight title owner, you're going to have to defend your title against the next thing. And it might be a younger, stronger, tougher opponent this time around, potentially. So it doesn't end. The battles never end. They're just different opponents every single time. So
amen to that.
Yeah.
I love that.
So
I love that too.
The bad news. The bad news is there's no utopia. And I think that's something people need to accept, is that existence is hard. And
and maybe that should be the first thing people accept before they even start anything. Like, here's the reality. This is the acceptance, yeah.
That's accepting at that really, really abstract layer of existence is difficult and you will always have these battles, is very, very helpful, because when the next one comes up, you're like, I knew this was coming. This isn't a surprise.
Right.
I'm not stressed out about it. I just know that there's a process for it. I need to go through it. So
I love that. That is great. That bad news is actually very beneficial to share. Absolutely.
And
the good news is that I have seen growth in areas that I achieved the goals that I wanted to achieve. And as new goals present themselves, I am able to tackle them successfully more often than previously. So I'd be stuck previously. Old Cody was stuck, and he'd have all these things he wanted to accomplish and change in his life, and they would never get done, and he beat himself up about it. Today, I can say, okay, if you want to do this, you know what you need to do. You need to spend time on it. You need to learn about it. And then you need to put effort into all of those things in order to move it forward at some pace. Don't be upset with it not happening overnight, but you need to continue to work on it if you really, really wanted to have it happen, which means saying yes to every opportunity that's related to that, no matter how scary or hard it sounds.
It's equipped him with the ability to tackle new goals.
Yeah.
I love it. What were you going to ask?
Oh, I was just really going to hit on and ask you a pretty personal question here. If you've truly forgiven yourself for all those things, and if you've got to that place within yourself that you don't excuse the behavior, but again, kind of goes into that acceptance of, yes, I was that way. Yes, I was acting that way, but you're just not beating yourself up about previous behaviors.
Yeah, focusing on the alcohol piece, I definitely have some memories that come up where I'm like, oh my God, you were so stupid, dude. Why were you that person, right? And I know some of the whys, but yes, short answer is yes. It's a lot easier for me to not have the guilt and shame around those topics, around my behaviors and who I was today. So that's another, I guess, good thing. When you come out the other end, eventually you'll be able to look back at yourself and be like, well, yeah, that was dumb, but I'm not that person now, and I'm not going to allow that to happen to me, my family, my friends, whoever again, because
it's very empowering.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What a great story, though. I mean, just his insight on everything, your insight is incredible. And you've been through a lot of stuff. and you're handling it with a lot of grace, and it's something to definitely be proud of. So
Thank you.
Do you think it's harder for men to achieve acceptance than women, even in general?
Hmm.
As in,
Yeah,
are men predominantly
I would,
raised like you have to
yeah.
be this way? Is there more fluidity with women?
I would say generally no,
Okay.
but I would say it also depends on the topic.
Okay.
It depends on what it is that person is struggling with that might have gender specific societal expectations around, right? So I'm guessing for a woman who grew up in a family where her mother was a stay-at-home mom and, went through the normal white picket fence American dream of getting married after college and having kids and being a stay-at-home mom and raising the children, that the daughter of that family may have more of a struggle with saying, no, I have a career and I have a life and I want to go do what I want to do. I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom. And maybe even pressure from those parents about, well, your husband works and makes good money and he needs to like provide it and you need to raise the kids and that's just how things go. So that might be a struggle. I can think of gay men or bisexual men. I identify as bisexual, having troubles accepting uh, that part of themselves and allowing themselves to be their authentic self in that space due to, again, the society pressures and the norms, the stereotypes that are put on those folks to hide those things for fear of, being an outcast or not being accepted by people that they love or love them. And that could be difficult as well. Shalene, are you asking more about like men being less likely to acknowledge and share that they have these emotions inside of them versus women?
Yes.
Yeah. So I can generally agree with that.
Yeah.
And again, I think it comes back to society's programming of
Hmm.
what a man should be and what masculinity is and such. And thankfully, I think that there's been a paradigm shift in that in the last 20 years or so, especially in younger generations where it's okay to have emotions and show emotions. I think a big component of that for that to be successful, though, is that the feminine side needs to accept that as well. And there's a raging debate right now
It's a
online,
hot topic right now.
a
It
hot
really
topic
is.
right now. I
That's
mean,
a
I'm on
hot topic.
TikTok at least
Hmm.
an hour a day, and I come across a woman screaming about how a man needs to be a man and do these things, and I come across a man talking about how men have the highest suicide rate because they can't talk about their feelings because if they do, then they're not, a man, and that they're looked down upon, and that they're not going to find a mate, a woman that wants to be with them because, and this is in the heterosexual world, obviously. Can't tell you how that plays out in the LGBTQA plus world because I'm just not that exposed to it. But in the heterosexual world, that is a raging debate for sure.
It is. It is. And those stats are accurate though. I mean, the men are absolutely right. And I think you are right. We are starting to see a shift of acceptance in general for men to be able to express their feelings and not have to keep everything bottled up and whatnot. And hopefully, ideally, can follow your path and live their true, authentic self.
Yep.
So that's yeah. All
And
right.
and, it, and what are the societal impacts of that? They're huge. So what percentage of gun violence is caused by heterosexual men? You look at all the school shootings we're having in the United States. How many of those shooters were heterosexual women? Damn near none. I can't remember one that was.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you think, and they were young too. A lot of these folks are young. They're not like older men. So they have all these emotions and feelings through pubescent stages of their life. They've got this family trauma they got to deal with, whatever it was in their upbringing, and they don't have an outlet for it. It's just bottled up inside of them. So they find outlets for them. And I'm not an expert on this either, but I'm just assuming, right, that we might see some alleviation in those statistics if we had a better societal acceptance and view of men and their emotions, and being masculine to share how you're feeling with people, and what's going on inside your head without fear of persecution.
It's really good stuff.
Amazing.
Hence,
Yeah.
acceptance is so important on so many levels.
And we've now gone from acceptance reducing gun violence. So
Right.
I just made that leap. I just made it.
We've accomplished a lot here in these 35 minutes.
This is amazing. Fantastic. Well, Cody, you really, I think, were a fantastic asset for our listeners. Kind of laid it out, the good, the bad, the nitty gritty, what it feels like deep in it, what it feels like when you're done, how to achieve it. Absolutely. That was really, really great. As far as acceptance goes, you hit the nail on the head, bud.
Yeah,
Glad I could be here. Glad I could share my story. I hope it helps.
It will help.
it
And I
will.
appreciate you being transparent.
Yeah, it's very brave of you to come on, a podcast that can reach all across the world and tell your story. And yeah, it will definitely create some positive waves. So thank you so much for that.
Excellent. Thanks for having me on, guys.